I was identified as the short, fat kid. That was who I was. That's how people knew me. If I wanted to meet someone at the airport, I'd say, "Oh, look for the short, fat bloke." I had a beard at some stage. The short, fat bloke with a beard. That's how you'll identify me. I was born in New Zealand. When I was 13, my parents went out to Papua New Guinea as missionaries in Papua New Guinea. Mum and Dad and my two brothers and sisters stayed on in New Guinea. At 16, I came back to boarding school at Longburn College. That was a major transition. I enjoyed being in New Guinea. Longburn was okay. It was a great school, but I struggled to fit into the culture back home again. And I got a job working as the pot boy in the kitchen at Longburn College. And that exposed me to as much food as I could possibly eat. And I took full advantage of that. And I put on probably about 20 kilos during the time I was at Longburn College. When I got married, I weighed in at about 95 kilos. And then gradually the weight continued to build up. I got to the point about 10 years ago where I weighed around 110 kilos. I went and saw the doctor. They did some blood tests. My fasting blood glucose was 6.5, which is borderline type 2 diabetes. My cholesterol was 8.2, which is very, very high. My blood pressure was 160 on 125. And the doctor said to me, "You need to lose some weight, Paul." And I said, "Yeah, right, I've lost tons of weight in my life, but every time I lose weight, the weight would come back on again." A couple of years earlier, my mum had died, and I'd had to confront some issues. Mum was a great mum. There was never any abuse or that sort of thing, but I'd always felt that Mum loved my brother more than she loved me. I'd never felt that I was good enough for Mum. Interestingly, when I spoke to my brother, he had the perspective that Mum loved me more than she loved him. It was the perspective we got. It was the way that Mum interacted with us. Mum's father had a problem with alcohol, and I think some of that was reflected there. Mum gave the impression of loving us because of what we did. If we were good kids, we were loved. If we weren't good kids, she didn't love us. Look, an example, my younger sister got her ears pierced, and she came home with her ears pierced, and Mum called her a tramp and wouldn't speak to her for 3 days. That was Mum's way of dealing with light. If we didn't keep our bedrooms tidy, Mum would come down. If we got really good marks at school, Mum would love us. And so there was this continual striving to be what I thought Mum wanted to be. And a lot of that was my own perception. I never really knew what Mum wanted me to be. I just had this mental image of what Mum wanted me to be. I had to come to the point where I said, Mum did the best she could. And my kids were starting to get older, and I realised I'd made some mistakes with my kids, and I had to sort of, I don't know, for want of a better term, reframe my perspective of Mum, say, okay, Mum did the best she could in the situation. And I also had to say, Paul, regardless of what Mum thought of you, I'm okay. Paul Rankin's a good bloke, and to say, yeah, I'm happy with who I am as an individual. And it wasn't until I got to that stage where I said, okay, Mum, you made some mistakes, you weren't perfect, that's fine, I'm happy to accept you for who you were, forgive you for what you were. And then say, Paul, you've done some stupid things too, but you're okay. I can handle that, I can live with that. That I was able then to take responsibility for my own health and say, okay, it's my job to lose weight. Sonia, my wife, had spent 20 years nagging me to lose weight. It kept her skinny, hadn't done anything at all for my weight. And it was then that I was able to say, okay, I'm going to actively do this. And I took 3 months long service leave, and I said to Sonia, I'm going to lose weight. She said, yeah, right, I've heard that before. And about 3 weeks in, she thought, oh, he's serious. And the whole family on the long service leave got in, and I was able to lose 18 kilos in the 3 months of long service leave. I've now lost a total of about 35 kilos in weight. But it wasn't until I got to that point where I was able to accept myself, accept my parents, that I was able to maintain that weight loss. That 10 years ago now, I now sit around the 73, 75 kilos. The choice to forgive, the choice to deal with those issues in the past, say, look, I can forgive that, I can move on beyond that, is what enabled me to maintain my weight loss. If I had maintained that weight loss now, I would be getting into major health problems at this stage. Everybody should forgive them. Look, everyone's got to take their own journey, but the advantages of forgiving yourself, being able to say to yourself, I'm who I am, and I'm happy with that. And I enjoy being who I am. Gives me the freedom to go on adventures, to step out, to not have to worry about what other people think about me, to not have to perform for that other person, to say, I'm performing for me. I'm not performing even for my wife or my kids. I'm not performing for my parishioners. I'm here for who I am, and I'm here because I want to be able to stand before God and saying, God, I have done the best that I can as Paul Meredith Rankin.